Alex, you're from GBENA.
Yep.
Yeah, and you've been researching the Army and Navy flyover and what's been happening to it and the repairs that have been done. And you've been having a look at the work before and after.
Yes, that's correct.
Now, tell me what you saw just after the work had been completed.
Came down here on the 13th of August after the works had been completed and the flyover was reopened. Just to see if the works that we had noted, the defects that we had seen, had been repaired, and we was quite shocked to see that 90% of them defects are still there, especially this column here. I mean, I don't feel too happy standing underneath this the flyover, but I'm here just to point it out and to show people the column itself before the work started was pretty much flush one side. The other, and as you can see on this side here, there's about a 2-inch gap. It shifted about 2 inches.
So let's have a look. So show me. Yeah. So show me what did you see beforehand? Beforehand,
before the flyover was shut, it was sitting pretty much flush with the end, and obviously it shifted over. And as you can see, since the 13th again, it has moved where this side here was actually sitting flush again, and it's moved over again, which is quite a concern really. And on the other side, one of the bolts that hold the column down, the pillar down, is actually sheared off underneath.
So let's have a look around the other side.
Yep. Yeah, so under here there is no, I mean, if you get the tape in there, you can push that tape into just 6¼ inches, 7 inches, well, there you go, 7 inches.
Yeah.
To see where the bolt sits is 4 inches in.
And you're confident that tape measure's not just going in the side of the bolt or anything?
No, that's going correct, straight in. I mean, you can stick your fingers in there and see if I set that centre there.
So you can, I guess you're concerned that the bolt isn't actually doing anything at the moment?
Yeah, that's correct.
So what are you pointing at there, Alex?
The original marking where the base plate of the pillar used to sit.
So that line.
It's gone up this line here, up to here. And it goes all the way along.
So I'm here with Councillor Mark Springett from the Liberal Democrats. We're here standing pretty much underneath the Army and Navy flyover, and it's the 1st of September, a lovely sunny day. Mark, we were last here back at the end of July, I think it was, yeah. Just before the work started, yeah. On the Army and Navy flyover, because there were some maintenance works that needed to be done. I think they finished around about the 13th of August, something like that,
something
it reopened.
Like that, yeah.
But we've been hearing concerns, and we're here today having a look at what people's concerns are about the works that have been done, yeah. And the issues that there still are. Can you tell us a bit more about this? There's been some issues raised by GBENA, the Great Baddow East Neghbourhood Association, about issues that they've noticed. Can you tell us a bit more about what people are saying?
So GBENA have highlighted a post the maintenance works, which were 3 weeks, so it's closed for 3 weeks. So they come back to have a look at the issues they'd identified before the maintenance work. And I can see they've demonstrated and pointed out where no maintenance has been carried out on the issues of the cracked concrete. There's also where they have addressed some of the cracked bits of concrete, but concreted or made some sort of treatment. But the trouble is that treatment hasn't been the right treatment for concrete cancer. From the evidence that I can see, it looks like they've just washed over with concrete, but what you can see is the iron rod, the steel rods that have corroded, and the rust is still seeping through some of those repairs. Now, when you treat concrete cancer, you treat the rod, and then you put a compound over that to stop any air and water getting to that. But only after a few weeks we can see the rust leaking out of those repairs, which demonstrates that they haven't treated the concrete cancer properly, which is a real worry, because obviously the issues about bits of concrete falling off is still an issue, because from the evidence it doesn't look like they've done the job properly.
And we've been having a look at some of this structure, and there are still some quite big cracks going along parts of the structure. Does that worry you?
It worries me, because I think that was one of the things the GBENA guys first noticed, and you can still see a number of cracks in the edge of the concrete, which is where the rust is pushing the concrete apart and making it fall off. Now you can treat concrete cancer, but you would have to reveal all of the rods that are corroding, and you would have to reveal all of the rods that you can't see to make sure they're not rusting, and then you treat it, and you know that could be another 5 years that it would be viable, or 10 years or whatever. But what we're seeing here is, you know, they haven't addressed that. Literally they've just patched it up. For how long? Are they intending to come back and do it properly? I don't know.
Now, one of the big issues that I know GBENA have raised is that one of the central columns, I mean, in fact, right behind you, we have some concerns about it. I mean, there seems to be some crumbling going along the base. It looks like one of the bolts doesn't appear to be connected to anything at all underneath. There's a big hole underneath that seems to have moved a bit. What do you have to say about that? I mean,
one of the things that GBENA people highlighted recently was one of the main pillars right in the centre of the Army and Navy had moved, and there was significant corrosion. Now, for a pillar on this sort of structure to move, that's really significant, so I needed to see for myself whether that was true. And the pillar in question is the one behind us here. Now, there's a concrete slab that the girder sits on, but on top of the concrete there's another thinner concrete slab. So the girder sits on top of that, and there are 2 bolts in it. Now the girder has moved around about an inch or so, a bit more than an inch to one side. Now for a significant structure like this, the integrity has to be in question. And what you can see where it's moved, the smaller concrete pad has cracked, is degraded. Now what concerns me is if the whole of that pad degrades to such an extent that effectively the girder would just be sitting, floating in space. And it does concern me from the photographs or the inspection that we've just done, that the concrete that's in the pillar doesn't go through into the larger block, it's only sitting on the thinner one. So actually, if that's the same for all of them, the only thing connecting the whole of the Army and Navy to the bigger pads is the 2 concrete pads. So therefore, I would expect to see the bolt go right through into the larger pad, and it doesn't appear to be that. Either that or the bolt's corroded completely away, which again is a massive integrity issue.
So that sounds really concerning, and it's very noisy here. I'm not a civil engineer, I don't pretend to be one.
No, neither am I.
Do you know if there has been a full structural survey done, an independent survey done of the Army and Navy flyover recently? So
we're not aware of that. We have received through Freedom of Information the report on the maintenance programme, which goes back to 2015, I think. So you can see all of the inspection runs that they've done. You can see that they haven't addressed the surface until the 3-week maintenance programme, so the anti-skid surface, that's been non-existent for a couple of years, and there's nothing on there to show you there's been a full structural survey, which you would expect on a 40-year-old bridge. You know, there's been no type of x-rays or acoustics testing in terms of cracks on the metalwork, and likewise on the concrete platform, which is effectively your road, which is the problems with the concrete cancer. You know, you would expect some sort of testing on that at some point in time. There's been no evidence of that.
So we know that Ringway Jacobs carried out 3 weeks worth of maintenance procedures on the flyover a few weeks ago. But I guess maybe it's possible that that wasn't like a full survey type maintenance thing that maybe the public might be expecting, that maybe it was just a kind of a patch-up job, perhaps. Do you think that's possible? I
think that's entirely possible, and I think it's probably true, because we can see evidence today where they haven't addressed maintenance issues. There's massive amounts of corrosion in brackets, in bolts that connect brackets to the concrete structure. And there's layering of rust, which takes a considerable amount of time to build up that level of corrosion. You would have thought at least they would have treated the corrosion and then used a special paint to protect it from the weathers, but they haven't done that. They've addressed what we think are the bits that are likely to fall off, the bits that look cracked, but as we see today, there are still bits of the concrete that could potentially be forced off through the corrosion expanding. And that's obviously a safety risk for the public. So from the evidence today, they haven't done a full maintenance programme on this bridge, and you can see it if you walk under it.
And I guess just finally, one of the things that I guess I'm concerned about as a taxpayer in Chelmsford is that when you're just patching things up, in the long run that tends to be more expensive, because you patch things up and then it doesn't last for very long and you have to come back and do a proper job, you know, next time around, and that concerns me. I mean, their contractors, I think it was 153 million Ringway Jacobs contract with the council. I mean, it's a lot of money, and obviously that's not all for the Army and Navy flyover, if only. But it concerns me that that money may not be being spent in the best possible way.
I think those worries are true. You see all over the world, all over the country, where structures like this or public buildings haven't been maintained. You get to a point where they've got to knock them down and rebuild new. Now at some point there's a lifespan on this. They haven't said what the lifespan is going to be, whether it's going to be another 10 years or another 6 months or another 20 years. So, but if it's another 20 years, then they've got to maintain it properly, and the evidence says that they haven't maintained it properly. Ringway Jacobs is paid a significant amount, as you just said, 153, 154 million pounds. Obviously not all it's all over Essex, but you would expect key strategic hubs like this, key facilities like this, structures like this, that have significant public safety attached to them, but they would do a rolling programme of maintenance, and a good rolling programme of maintenance. And you know, as I said before, the evidence here suggests that they haven't done that.
So, still concerns about the Army and Navy flyover?
Yes.
Let's see what the council's response is.
Yes.
Thanks so much.
Thank you.